Hello, I'm Christian Fraser. You're watching The Context on BBC News. The Russian foreign minister walks out of a UN Security Council meeting to avoid the wholesale condemnation of the Kremlin's war in Ukraine.
The very international order that we have gathered here to uphold is being shredded before our eyes. We cannot, we will not allow President Putin to get away with it.
But when Sergei Lavrov did sit to address the council, the Russian foreign minister blamed the West for pumping Ukraine full of weapons.
There's an attempt today to impose on us a completely different narrative about Russian aggression as the origin of all the tragedy.
In Russia, draft papers are being handed to young reservists who've been called up for the war. But there are plenty trying to escape, with long queues forming at the border. And the sixth day of protests in Iran, triggered by the death of a woman in police custody. What does it tell us about the changing attitudes in Iran? Tonight, with The Context, Stephanie Brown-James, the co-founder of the Collective PAC, a group campaigning for equal representation in American politics, and Joe Twyman, director of the political research company Delta Poll. Hello, warm welcome to the programme. The UN Secretary-General has told the Security Council there will be a reckoning for those responsible for war crimes committed in the occupied areas of Ukraine. Antonio Guterres said the investigators exhuming bodies from mass burial sites in the east have documented appalling evidence of torture and summary executions. So, let's discuss the events in New York today. I thought, Joe, one of the more interesting things actually was the comment from the Chinese delegation on the side of the meeting. The Chinese foreign minister, talking to his Polish counterpart, said an expansion of the war benefits no one and China hope the flame of war will be extinguished. Well, 7 months ago, China said that it had developed this no-limits partnership with Russia, but it seems suddenly there is a limit to how far this friendship goes. Well, let's bring in Yuri Sak in Kyiv. He's an advisor to the Ukrainian Defence Minister. And also with us, Melinda Herring. She's the Deputy Director of the Atlantic Council's Eurasia Centre. Maybe I could just start with you, Melinda, because I think we can all see what is happening here. We've seen Medvedev's comments today. The idea is that there will be this referenda in each of these four regions. They will be taken in as Russian territory and they will fall under the nuclear umbrella that the Kremlin is putting up. And there seems to be an inevitability about what is going on, because I can't imagine, we'll talk to Yuri in a second, but I can't imagine the Ukrainian Defence Force is going to change its tactics. Well, there has been another development today, in fact, one of the most significant prisoner swaps we've seen since the war began. Russia has released 215 Ukrainian soldiers, including commanders of the Azov regiment, which defended, you'll remember, Mariupol. In exchange, Ukraine handed over 55 Russian soldiers, including the pro-Kremlin politician and oligarch Viktor Medvedchuk, who was facing charges of treason in Ukraine. Medvedchuk, a godfather to one of Putin's children. Yuri, it's rather surreal, this, Yuri, because you've got a scenario where Vladimir Putin appears to be getting ever more belligerent, and yet on the other hand, he's prepared to trade. Yeah, we should say that many of the Ukrainians that were exchanged have showed signs of violent torture. The head of the Ukrainian military intelligence said some of them have been through a pretty rough time. Draft papers for those 300,000 reservists now being handed out in towns and cities all over Russia. That announcement, though, has sparked something of an exodus among young Russians who don't want to fight. So the European Union members, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia and the Czech Republic, they've all said today that they won't be offering refuge to Russians who are fleeing. Finland is considering ways to sharply reduce Russian tourism and transit, but Russians can still cross into Georgia in the south without a visa, and this was the traffic at the checkpoint on Wednesday evening. Our reporter Reham Dimitri sent us this update from the border. Melinda, we've got some pictures that came to us today from a place called Yakutsk, which is in far northeastern Russia. I mean, these are pictures we haven't seen since the days of the Second World War. Men, boys off to war, being drafted, saying goodbye to their families. And what strikes me is, you know, you're talking about an area up near Siberia here. You're not talking about the sons of the elite in St. Petersburg and Moscow. And that is obviously a deliberate decision. Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Yuri Sak, Melinda Herring, lovely to talk to you. Thank you very much for coming on the programme. The protests in Iran have now spread to more than 80 towns and cities across the country. This is the sixth day of demonstrations, triggered, of course, by the death in custody of a young woman who'd been arrested by the morality police. State television says that 17 people have been killed in the protests so far, with 3 security personnel among the dead. The powerful Revolutionary Guard has now stepped in, demanding the judiciary prosecute those who are spreading, quotes, false news and rumour. There's an internet blackout in some parts of the country. Instagram and WhatsApp have been taken down. Now, in a rare interview with foreign media, the father of Mahsa Amini contradicted the authorities' version of events about how his daughter had died. Well, that interview was done by Jihar Gol from BBC Persian. He's been speaking to Mahsa Amini's father, and it's quite clear from what he says that there was no history of health problems, and he clearly has a very good idea of what he thinks went on. The president, the Iranian president, Ibrahim Raisi, has said that there will be an investigation. Is there any confidence that the facts will come out? And we can see lots of pictures of women who are wearing the hijab slightly back off their hair. Stephanie, can I talk to you about what we're seeing in Iran at the moment? I mean, we should make the point, this is a new generation of Iranians. I suppose a lot of them that are taking part are the Iranian Gen Z. So they're on Instagram. They see how their neighbours live. They see how people in the West live. And they want something different. I guess the question is, how far can these protests go to deliver the sort of change that they want?
Believes in freedom of speech, who believes in freedom of expression, and who believes in freedom generally. And I think we have seen similar protests in the past that have been crushed, sometimes brutally, by the regime. Yeah. The question is, at what point do things really change and hold? Because traditionally,
we'll have to leave it there, Joe. We're going to the break. Hello, I'm Christian Fraser. You're watching The Context on BBC News. The Bank of England raises interest rates to their highest level for 14 years. They've gone up 0.5%, with the warning from the bank that further forceful monetary tightening will be needed to bring inflation under control. The fracking ban in England is scrapped to secure energy supply. Critics say the move will not reduce the price of wholesale gas prices and could lead to localised earthquakes. Across the pond, where they frack for fun, the world's energy leaders are meeting in Pennsylvania to discuss a greener energy future. Tonight, with The Context, Stephanie Brown-James, the co-founder of the Collective PAC, a group campaigning for equal representation in American politics, and Joe Twyman, director of the political research company Delta Poll. Welcome back. The Bank of England has today raised its base rate to the highest level since 2008 and the financial crash. The rate went up half a point to 2.25%, not as big as the market was expecting. And that's largely because the bank thinks the UK is already in recession. The governor's job is to maintain inflation at around 2%. The bank thinks it will peak in October at around 11%. On the bright side, that is lower than the extraordinary predictions we had earlier in the year that inflation might reach 14 or 15%, but it is a long, long way from 2%, which suggests rates will continue to rise. I'm joined by Vicky Price in London. She's the Chief Economic Advisor at the Centre for Economics and Business Research and a former government advisor. Thanks for being with us, Vicky. Do you think the bank went far enough today? Yeah. Joe Twyman, the Institute for Fiscal Studies said today that UK borrowing and debt are being pushed to unsustainable levels. The government is hell-bent on cutting taxes at the time when it's putting up spending. Interesting, though, and I thought you've probably had a look into this today, the British Social Attitude Survey was out, and it seems that actually a lot of Brits, in fact a majority of Brits, favour increasing taxes and further welfare spending, and nearly half approve of redistribution of wealth to those less well off. So is the government on the wrong track? Is it at odds with public attitudes? Delicate balance the central banks have to strike. Vicky Price, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for coming on the programme. The ban on fracking is to be lifted. It has confirmed the process, which includes pumping fluid into rocks to shatter them to release the gas and oil, was suspended in 2019 amid concerns it could trigger earthquakes. But the Business Secretary, Jacob Rees-Mogg, said today that allowing fracking would help to strengthen the country's energy security following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. All right, well, let's talk about that meeting in Pittsburgh. In fact, the US Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, who was at the UN Security Council today, said we're focusing too much on the war on Ukraine. It is distracting the international community from its focus on the most senior issues at hand. And that, of course, is global warming. And yet a few hours' drive from New York, in the city of Pittsburgh, as Stephanie was saying, we've got the Global Clean Energy Action Forum. It's a 3-day event at which the world's top energy and climate ministers will be trying to figure out how to accelerate the world's transition to those cleaner energy sources. The chosen venue, highly symbolic, because Pittsburgh is a city that was built on steel and fossil fuels. Drew Laban is the chair of the steering committee at Mission Innovation. It's a global initiative aiming to make clean energy affordable and accessible. And he joins us from the summit that is taking place in Pittsburgh. Thank you for being with us. A lot of people would think we're going backwards at the moment. We're signing new contracts for fossil fuels, we're drilling for oil and gas, we're burning more coal. Is that sharpening the focus there in Pittsburgh? Joe Twyman, it is the paradox of the current energy crisis we're in that the cheaper, more readily available in some countries, sun, wind, wave, those sort of technologies are readily available, and yet we seem to be hurrying towards the old systems, the old dirty fossil fuels. Is it time for a reset? Really important summit there in Pittsburgh on the fringes of the General Assembly. Drew Laban, thank you very much indeed for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, it is that time of the evening. It is time for the panel. Joe, you want to talk tennis. You want to talk Federer.
I always want to talk tennis, but I particularly want to talk tennis tonight.
There could be a very important doubles match this week. I've been reading about it. Federer's last competitive game.
I think there's some real stars on the horizon.
Talking of stars, you want to talk about Michelle Obama, who herself is on tour at the moment. What sort of tour? Yeah, too smart to run. It has been said before, indeed so. Joe Twyman, Stephanie Brown-James, lovely to have your company on the programme this evening. We will be back same time next week on Monday. Do hope you will join us for that. For the moment, thanks very much for watching. Good night.